What's good? What's good, everybody? Excited for our sixth podcast right now. So we have a special guest. Thomas will be on the pod with us. Welcome, Thomas. How you doing?
I'm well. How about you?
I am doing well. We're very excited. I know in our new podcast, new format that we wanted to try was what would it be like if we ended up allowing the speaker to be able to choose who our next guest would be. I heard something back in I think it was like a couple of years ago. I was in a class, I was listening to somebody talk, and they talked about how they said something like in the 70s or 80s, you were like seven connections away from anybody in the world. And they talk about how today, with all the social media and just all the networking that we can do, we're like somewhere between two to three relationships away from anybody in the world. And so, um, and when I think about that, I think, man, like I'm only what two relationships away from the president, which would mean that's one relationship away from any leader in the world. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So have you ever heard anything like that before?
Yeah, in fact, I was quite intrigued by it probably around the time that we were running the football league, just because, I don't, we kind of talked before this, but Adrian
Yeah.
was your last person
Yep.
that you spoke with. We ran a nonprofit league and we had teams from as far west as El Paso, Texas, as far west and south, and as far north as Canada. And I always joke, like, we really are just one connection away from a new team every day because of just that saturation. But when you really think about it, you are so, I've just been being coached by Dan Martell, who is the guy that wrote how Buy Back Your Time, and really cool dude, worth 35 million. But just being in his coaching class, like you listen as we're going through these coaches, and they've got people that are selling millions of dollars, connected with Gary Vaynerchuk, and all of these other big time entrepreneurs.
Oh.
So he's it's one of those cool things. If you realize how close you are to making a good networking decision, it blows your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think he recently showed up in my algorithm on YouTube actually, but well, let's get started with from a different perspective. I think what I'm more interested in is people learning about people's road. Like where did you start up? What was your upbringing like? And then we'll get to some other stuff. But yeah, well,
All right.
tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
So I was born in on December 19th, 1985, in Clearwater, Florida. My parents lived in a trailer um, that was so bad. The horror stories are that they used to have to cover me with a sheet at night so that the palmetto bugs couldn't like get on me.
The wait, what the what bugs?
Palmetto bugs. They're these giant roaches about this big. They're all throughout the southeast. Yeah, you being in the northwest, you don't have to worry about that quite as much. But yeah. So I have a an insane amount of horror wrapped around roaches, but not just because of
What?
the palmetto bugs. Um,
Oh,
yeah. So we they lived there about 3 weeks, and then decided to move to Chicago. And
oh.
we were in a car that didn't have heat, didn't have anything, and it's in the middle of winter. I guess that they had to stop at local like restaurants along the way just to take me inside to warm me up. They'd order water, and
Wow.
then they'd continue
Wow.
on their path. Fast forward, I was in, I think if I kept count right, 13 different schools growing up. And then by the
Oh,
time that I was 13, I went into foster care, and I was in foster care within the first 3 years. I was in four different homes. At one point,
whoa.
even got
Okay.
kicked out of high school. Yeah, go
Wait,
ahead.
hold on,
It
hold on.
goes forever.
Yeah. No. Foster care. So walk me through what caused you to have to go into that direction.
So my parents were never well off. In fact, my grandparents bought them a house in Joliet, Illinois, which is right outside of Chicago. And they couldn't afford it. They, basically left it trashed. Sorry, got a
Okay.
frog in my throat, but they basically left it trashed, and they decided that they would live off the system, and it just didn't work out well for them. My dad was always at work, but we never had money. Don't know the ins and outs of that, of course, but then one day, when I was right around 13. My dad had been home more often. He wasn't working quite as often. I was over at a grown cousin's house playing some PlayStation. We were playing, Resident Evil or
Come on,
something.
let's go.
And
No
yeah,
Crash Bandicoot.
well, we had some Crash, but that was the thing at that point. Like that was a brand new game at that point. But anyway, I
Okay.
came home 15 minutes early, and my dad lost his stuff, and or 15 minutes late, and my dad lost his mind basically. Ended up choke slamming me onto the ground because I turned up late, and now mind you, I wasn't out, like doing bad stuff. I was literally over at a cousin's house. Um, and my mom sided with him, told the police that I attacked him, and they kind of dunked on me and put me into. They were going to put me straight into foster care because they found out afterwards that wasn't quite the case, right? Like I wasn't the aggressor in the situation, but it was a little too late to find a foster home so quick. So I ended up in a group home, like something in between juvie and a group home for 30 days
Was
until I
this
was put in a foster home.
was this something that like was this something that caught you off guard in the sense of because it sounded like he snapped, but is that something that like you grew up under that pressure constantly, or did this even catch you
Um,
way off guard?
so, I'm a millennial. So, every once in a while our parents handed our butts to us, for lack of a
Yeah,
better way to
yeah.
put it. But typically my dad's recipe was words. He'd just make you feel like crap, make you feel like lesser than. My
Mm,
dad had this affliction where he could never admit he was wrong, and so
yeah.
it didn't matter. You could have a big newspaper with a picture showing the proof of what he thought he was right about, and it wouldn't matter. He'd say no, it ain't happened. So relatively aggressive for him, but not out of character, for lack of a better way to put it.
Man, okay. So that's okay. So that caused you to not cause, but that led to kind of you going into the foster care system a little bit,
Yep.
and then walk us through a little bit after that. What was going on after that?
So I went into foster care. The first house I went into was about 40 minutes away from where I was from, and they just had a pool. Everything seemed like it was going good, but one day they were just like, "We don't like this kid," and they sent me away. Um, the second foster home I went to was actually where I made well, it's actually the reason I know my wife, because I met a lot of my best friends in ninth and 10th grade while I was there.
Mm.
And her brother is one of my best friends, or was at the time one of my best friends. So that's kind of how I met my wife in a roundabout way. But after that, I was removed from that house because the foster mother at that house she lot of animosity towards humans in general. I loved the foster father. In fact, it all came to a halt when the foster dad was checking up on me after we had went out, because she was kind of going in on me, and she ripped him apart, told him to go away, and then I asked to
Yeah.
be removed. Um, and then I got to another one, which was a man, David, who had two other kids in the house. He was the kind that was like, "I love you," and all this other stuff, and that just wasn't my vibe, admittedly, especially as a 15, 16-year-old
Yep.
guy. I didn't want to have any part in it. And it wasn't a good fit. And then also while at school, I was getting made fun of because of him. He owned like a hair salon. He's a person that loves everyone. If that, not straight, not
Yep.
gay,
I'm
just kind
following
of
you.
loves
Yep.
everybody. So the kids would key in on that as ways to bully me, and I'm not one to be bullied. I've never been able to be bullied. I fight, and so I got in so many fights that I got kicked out of high school. Got put into 411, which is 4 students to a teacher and to a teacher's aide. It's like for the kids that are
Oh,
really bad, even though I was not particularly a bad kid, but I would, like, if even as an adult, I guess, if you decide to try to, check me, I'm not one, I just cannot be checked. I will fight until I'm dead. So
what
anyway,
is it? There's a saying, right? It's like I forgot how it goes. Something like it is better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener at war, right? And so
yes,
it's like
sir.
you're a peaceful person, you'll keep to yourself, but if somebody confronts you, then You're willing to step up if you have to.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not particularly proud of the choices I made as far as that's regarding, but typically it was I was being bullied and the kid, would push and I would push back. So anyway, I got and that's how it is, right? Like I would rather I was always that way with bullies with other kids too. I just I've never been the type to let the people around me or myself be unnecessarily pushed around. So I ended up getting kicked out of that school and all by myself, I got myself back into high school. I actually passed my what was it,
GED.
10th grade? No, my 10th grade global exam. I did it by myself. I legitimately took the entire course out of the book with a little bit of the teacher's help, but taught myself, got myself. I was transferred to another foster home, and they said, "Well, if we can trust you, we'll advocate to get you back into high school." And then got back in 11th and 12th grade were probably my best 2 years of school as far as grades were concerned, and then I graduated.
What motivates a person like you to not want to? So, like, if one of the challenges with when I hear about kids getting bullied, right, and then they stand up for themselves, and quite often the person that stands up for themselves finds himself in more trouble than the person that has a reputation of doing the
Yeah.
bullying, right? So it could seem like a bleak world, right? And you have this tension with your family, relationship wise. There really doesn't seem to be much stability. You get removed from the one stability that most kids have grown up, which is the consistency of school, right? At least
Yep.
that gets removed from you. What motivates you to want to still continue on a path where, you know what I mean? Like what drives you
Right.
to follow that?
I'm not really completely certain. At that age, especially, right? I will tell you, my ninth grade year was the year that Curtain Call came out by Eminem.
Hey, yes.
Yeah, and so I still remember sitting on that couch the night that they were removing me from the one that I had finally found a good friends and everything, ninth and 10th grade. Uh, the song Soldier?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I still remember, in fact, we were driving
Are
in
you
the
talking
car.
about a toy soldier?
Not Toy Sol let me
Oh,
see.
I'm thinking that's what I'm thinking
No,
of.
I'm a soldier. I'm
Oh,
trying
yep,
to be,
yep, I
yeah,
got you.
yeah,
I know.
okay, yeah.
Yep, yeah.
So I still remember me and my wife were actually driving down the road the other day and it came on and I was like, dang, that just set me on that couch in my foster home, reminded me. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but yeah, Eminem and Linkin Park were actually two of the things that got me through like all of that, right? Like I would just turn it on, jam out, and just veg until I got myself calm enough to get up, pick myself up, and keep going. And my final foster home, for all of their deficiencies, the one thing that they did bring was a tough, straightforward love in the sense that like if you're gonna make it, you're gonna make it one way or the other. So it's not on us; it's on you. You decide whether that's something you want, and you go get it. And yeah, between between music and those things, that was honestly because there was not much else to drive me forward. They were trying to pump. I'm not at worst I've got ADHD, right? But I'm not a depressed person, even when I'm being beaten down. I typically, when I was younger, would learn to disassociate a little bit, but overall, I'm a fairly positive person. So as long as I have like one or two people in my life just going, keep going, Tom,
Yeah,
keep
this.
going, you
Yeah.
got this, I'll be fine.
It's interesting you say that because I'm thinking of my upbringing and my childhood because I didn't go through foster care system, but I did go. Well, I guess I did because I was adopted from Ethiopia,
Okay.
and then so I know the house to house to house. I know that transition, but I was blessed enough that it happened at like age 7 versus like middle school and high school. That can have a totally different impact. But you said two artists that for some reason I also connected with, which was Eminem and Linkin Park. Dude, Linkin Park was just you had your headsets, you had your CD player, right? And
Yep.
like you had to have the CD case with you so you knew which song was what track and what number it
Yep.
goes to. And you have to make sure you had your AA batteries charged. But it's like when you said that, I thought, why did Linkin Park stand out for people like you and I? Why did Eminem? What do you think about it connected? Because I felt the same way.
Right.
I know exactly.
I think that for me it was these are young adults feeling the way I feel and saying the thoughts that are in my head out loud, right? And because there's something about hearing a guy just scream at the top of his lungs, shut up when I'm talking to you, right? Like, because as a kid, especially as a kid that didn't have anybody to hold on to and anybody to let me know everything was okay, I was looking for people to listen. Like, I wanted, like the one foster home I was in, the one that I, got removed from, that I thought that I was going to be at until I was done with high school, they wouldn't let me in the kitchen. We weren't allowed to go out of our room unless we were going into the dining room to eat or going outside to school or going outside to play. Like, legitimately, you could come out the end of it, like we were at the end of a trailer. We could come out of our room, go into our bathroom, and we could go out the door, but otherwise they didn't want us anywhere. Like, it was kind of like being a cat. Like, you could be in your space and you got your litter box back here, but otherwise just leave us alone, right?
That's wild. Yeah, that's wild. I was thinking of remember that song Crawling?
Yeah.
Linkin Park? Dude, that was like that, and in the end, for some reason, those two songs were just...
Do you remember when Reanimation came out?
When would that have been?
So Reanimation came out, I think, like 4 years later, but it was like remixes of all of those songs.
Oh, it's like remastered, right?
Yeah,
like
well, but it was like complete remixes of them all. Like, they added different...
Hey, talking about, like, is that the one with, like, because I know they did a remix of Numb with, like, Jay-Z in them.
So that was actually later. Yeah, that was actually a totally different one. When you get a chance, check out Reanimation. And it's absolutely fire, because it just took all of those songs that we loved, and then, like when we were like around 20, it made them all new again, basically. Yep.
That's fine. Oh, that sounds exciting. Yeah. It's music. It's so interesting, because it's like, when we were interviewing Adrian, we were having a conversation. For him, it was like comic books were kind of the thing that he didn't really talk too much into the music industry as much.
Right.
It sounds like for you, the music industry was pretty important, and for you as well. But so, what were like your hobbies like when you were growing up? What were things that you enjoyed doing up until adulthood, I guess?
For me, I'm sorry, I'm messing this video up on you. Me, I think that my hobbies were mostly music, and not only music, I played some sports. I played football for a little while. Football wasn't quite there for me, because while I was fast as lightning, I'm 5'6", and at that time I was like, 5'6", 130. So, getting out on a football field at that size is not the most fun thing to do, especially when your favorite positions are safety and running back.
Well, if you're 130 and you said 5'6", right?
Yeah.
You better hope you have speed on your side.
Right. Which in fact, right before I got kicked out of high school, I was so adamant that I was going to finish my my season for sprinting. No. It wasn't that school. It was against that school. This is part of the hero story, right? So I go to Fillmore, which is the final school that I went to, the one that I got back into high school during, and I was running track. Second practice of the year, I blew out my hamstring. Like, I would literally, when I would come home at night and take off the ace bandage, the muscle from the back of my hamstring would fall down behind my kneecap. Like, you could actually feel the ball of muscle. Yeah, it was so disgusting. But are you ready for this? I was so adamant that I was going to finish that season that I ran on it. So what I would do is I would tighten up that ace bandage and basically create my own hamstring. And I ran a 12.66 with a blown out hamstring, which is insanity in the big scheme of things, because your average, like, I think the woman's world record is like 10.69, right?
I don't think I could run 12.6 in my peak, and you know what it was.
Yeah, I did it and it's so funny because somebody has there's like a picture of me as I'm coming out of one of the races, and you can just see me making this gnarly face and kind of like holding my leg up, because what I had to do was I had to kick off of my left leg, and my right leg was just able to kind of just pull me
You're
forward.
talking from the box, right?
Yep. And then whenever I took a step, I had to basically like use my right leg, which was the blown out hamstring, as kind of just like a peg to keep myself moving forward. And then I'd just kick off that left leg again. But yeah, I actually got second place in that race. with a blown out hamstring against the team that I got kicked out of high school from. I beat both of their runners, and it just
Okay, so that was
yeah.
that was a revenge moment for you. So you're like,
Yeah.
Dude, do you know how much frustration you have to run on a blown knee just to make sure that the other school knew? That's
And
insane.
it's funny because my doctor at the time, because my foster mother hated track. She thought it was lame. She was like, you're just running. And I was like, I don't, that's what I'm best at. I love this, right? And she took me to the doctor when I did my hamstring injury, and the doctor said, she's like, you may never walk again if you keep running on this because you've ripped it at this point, and there's no guarantee without surgery that it will reconnect. It eventually did. I don't have any, lasting issues from that. But I was, I knew that I wasn't going to run professionally. I knew I wasn't going to play sports professionally, but I didn't get to play all those years coming up, right? Because my parents didn't have the money for most of the sports when I was coming up, or they just didn't want to take me. And then even in foster care, I didn't have much hope to play early on. So I was gonna do it. So I played that season. I played track or ran track, played soccer and basketball that year. Yeah. So
what position did you play in those sports?
So soccer, I really wanted to be a defender, but I ended up having to be a striker because they tried. By nature, the fighter's nature, I will chase you down. The issue is that's not good for a defender. You don't want the defender trying to take take it back up the field. And then in basketball, I was always shooting guard, point guard. And the downside is I was actually fairly good at both, but I rode the bench most of the year because I was new to the school. I didn't even know how to play. You know what I mean? From the perspective of I'd never been on a field. I just knew how to run and knew how to, score. But outside of that,
there's a difference when it comes to sports, and you learn this is like there's a difference between playing with your buddies in a park versus playing in organized.
Right.
So it really is a different. I played a little bit of soccer, a little bit of basketball, and I'm telling you this right now, I was way better. You could put the exact same roster going against the other team exact same way, and you put us like in a random gym and just played, for some reason perform a lot better than if you put us like in an organized structure.
Right. So let me play off of that. First of all, what positions did you play?
So soccer, I started out as a striker, but the problem that we ran into, our team was me and this one other guy, Ryan. We were both strikers up front. What the issue was, the defense was so bad that they never got the ball past it. So then they moved me to a defender. So then Ryan ended up being the striker. So I ended up being a defender, I guess mid-right. And that was what I played the whole year. And then in basketball, I was mainly the point guard.
Okay.
But yeah.
So
but I was one of those kids. Good.
No, you're good. Go ahead. I love hearing your stories too.
No, I was one of those kids. For some reason, at a very young age, I found out that I am better at math than I am at sports.
Oh yeah, you and I are opposite in that. Very opposite.
Well, my buddy, so I had a best friend growing up. His name was Kevon. Great. I mean, this dude was like, him and I were like, whenever we played sports in school, everything, either I was captain one, he was captain two, or like we just always had to be on separate teams.
Right.
And whenever we got together, it was just not fair.
Right.
Like that's how good we were, right? And I remember in 8th grade, I watched this kid dribbling. It was like it came on the news. This young kid, he had cornrows, came out of Seattle. Insane dribbles, like just like what looked like Kyrie handles before Kyrie, kind of insane. And him and I were both watching that videos. He watched that video and was like, "Oh, I could kill that kid." And he's like, "I'll take him out easily." I watched that video and was like, "No, I don't want to work that hard." So we both went a different direction, and so that's kind of what sports became like. Ultimately, just like I was that kid that was like, "Hey, let's all have fun." That became me. While Kevon became the person that's like, I mean, he went on to become like all West Coast defensive player.
Killer. Yeah.
Dude, seriously.
Yeah.
And he's one of those kids that like, you hear people talk about like, oh, if I had a great coach, I could have gone pro or something like that. Kevon's one of those guys that I actually believe that if he continued, like he was all-star, like when it came to, I mean, even in football, he dominated. And then he was an insane linebacker. And then in basketball, he was insane. I probably would have been small forward, would have been his primary position. And actually had the talent. it's different when someone advocates that you could have gone further rather than
Right.
you yourself
Right,
advocating.
advocating for
I'm
it. Right.
advocate. Yeah, that was different. But
Yeah. So
yeah,
I had what was I want to make sure I don't lose my train of thought. So I still remember we had our center go down in the middle of a basketball game, and remember I'm backup at that point. I'm not on the starting squad, and I always felt like so we were a state team for soccer. Like our team actually choked in the final game. Yeah, our best player actually choked on a breakaway, and then the next 2 years they won states both times. Um,
oh,
After we were gone. But so our center went down in a basketball game, and I had never gotten the chance to prove, what I was capable of. So I came in, I was only in for 3 minutes, and I scored 7 points, had 2 assists. And yeah, so now here's how it happens though, because this is the thing. I think that,
7.
yeah,
That's
so
like dropping 100 in basketball.
right. Well, but the funny thing is, it goes back to that I can play with friends when I have no. But that's because I wasn't refined, and that might be even your problem, right? Because these kids they start when they're like 5, 6, 7. I was having to start when I was like 14, 15, 16,
Yep.
right? So I
Yep.
came into the game. Very first thing I did, I dribbled up the court. Our typical point guard was playing shooting guard at the time. I come up for a fake 3-pointer. Like this is like NBA level because I still remember how funny it was that I just did something that I've never done before in my life. So I fake a 3. I see him down like coming up the lane, and I throw the ball down to him. He scores. So I got the first assist. I'm skipping down the court. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Come up, and I like just come right up the court, same exact thing, hit a 3 right off the bat. And then I come back we come back down the court. Uh, this one's actually funny. So that was the end of that quarter. Come back down, and my buddy, the center, was able to dunk, but he was a shorter dude. Well, I got a foul on that end because we came down. He missed a shot. I used my arm to put my hand on his shoulder, and I already had hops. I literally grabbed the ball and dunked it. But the issue is it didn't count because I got a foul. But I was just so hyped being in the game, like I'm playing with my friends in the backyard. I didn't have the mindset that we were in a game. But yeah, I ended up hitting another 3 and then 1 or 2 foul shots in that game. And so that actually got me a start in our senior game against the best team in the league. And that didn't go as well. That was because you get in your mind, right, and you're like, I gotta play safe. I can't be playing. No, it was terrible, man. So that was my glory in that sense.
Okay, so that's 7 points, but I thought you said in my head I understood that 7 goals as in soccer.
No,
So
sorry,
but
but basketball. But I mean, 3 minutes, seven points in a game is a pretty dang. I was in the newspaper. It was really cool, right? But what can you do?
No, I mean, like college players typically, like you only have a few of them that can average over 20, but most of them are in between 7 to 15 is probably
and they're playing like 16, 17 minutes a game on top of it, right?
Exactly.
So I was pretty proud of that. In fact, soccer was kind of the same way though. I was put into a game that we were up 15-0. I scored the 16th goal within, we had 23 seconds left and they put me in the game and we scored another goal. And then another game we played against the same team, we beat them. It was a shortened game because our goalie ended up breaking his leg, but I scored the first goal in that game and we won that one by like 11. So like it was fun, but it definitely wasn't meant to be. Business was definitely where I was supposed to kill people,
We our soccer team, we ended up going 0, 15, and 1.
Oh,
like we were off.
Ouch! You were that team actually, because that was that was about their record. Yeah, I'm sorry.
What ended up with us was all of my friends and I. We did a lot of sports together. One year we decided, dude, let's just all join a soccer team. Like just to join a soccer team. And so it's like, imagine 10 out of your 12 best friends decide, let's all join. So we were all on the same team. So it's like, we were like high-fiving the other teams when they scored on us. They were like, the other teams quickly were like, oh, okay, I remember at one point we were down 0-6, like within like 5 minutes. It was like not even long. And this team was playing like their JV would have destroyed our varsity easily. And we at one point we were like, what the heck? They're not scoring anymore. So I ended up talking to one of the guys on the other team. I was like, yo, man, like our defense is getting worse. Why are you guys not scoring? And he said his coach told them that the only way they could score is it had to be a header. So they had to like make sure that every goal was a header or they couldn't score.
Yeah, so they had to have that cross coming across the middle, and
exactly, yeah, which was helpful for us because we always just like made sure we piled up in there. But what is it about us men? I don't know what it is. Like we can't remember what we're supposed to get from the grocery store, but we could tell you what happened 15 years ago down to the detail.
Right. Well, I think that's compounded, right? Because COVID didn't help with the long and short-term memory loss. But no, in general, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact the main reason that I'm in business and the way that I do what I do is because to a certain extent, it's the hunt, right? Like it's why, we survived as humans.
So let's talk about that. So it sounds like you had the high school. Well, before we get into the business world, was there any sort of reconciliation? I know with your family as far as like, or did you finish out in the what do you call it, foster system?
I finished out in foster care. In fact, I tried to have a few different, get back with my parents, make sure that they, were people that I kept in touch with. But for lack of a better way to put it, they're both narcissists, and you can't please a narcissist for long enough to maintain a healthy relationship when you're not there. And so, everything I've done by myself, for lack of a better way to put it.
So then, did you end up going to college? Did you end up, what trajectory did you go after high school? What was that like?
So I went to college. I was going to be a teacher, and my girlfriend at the time cheated on me. Best thing that could have happened in the world, though, because she cheated on me. I quit college. I went to grinding. Like I was working 90 hours a week at two jobs that were 45 minutes apart. So like I was just burying myself in making money and working. College didn't work out because I'm a self-teacher. I like to learn by actually learning. I don't want to memorize things. I don't want to take tests to prove my proficiency. That all worked out pretty well in the end.
So why did you choose originally why did you want to be a teacher at first?
For me, having been in foster care, I never wanted to be a foster parent because I saw how even the good ones could kind of be pressed into bad situations, and it just wasn't a good way for me to help forward. But teaching, I love. I always tell people, especially in my consulting business, that I am educated this way, not this way. So, and what I mean by that is so when I'm talking to people, typically you could come to me and you could say, hey, I've got an idea for a business that you've never even heard of. But the way my brain works and the way that I love, information, I'm typically able to, find a dot where we can connect and bring it back to that. And I thought that I could help other people in that way. Because as a teacher, my history teachers and my social studies teachers were always my favorite. Because they have to paint a picture, right? They have to tell a story. They have to actually give you a lot of information that has no tether, right? Whereas in math, as you mentioned, I was terrible at math, but math has a tether. You always know where you're starting from if you know what you're doing. Whereas history, sometimes you've got to muddy through some waters to find the truth and find out where the colonizers are lying and where the losers are lying. It's really there's a lot of nuance and semantics involved. And that's actually what I love about teaching.
Okay, so I also can actually connect with that. Like I that's one of the things that you talked about colonizers, right? And there's a way that history is told, right? And then there's the way that it most likely happened.
Yep.
And I feel like, especially with what's been going on in our society and how hot the waters have been for a while, and things are starting to somewhat cool down, especially in the race realm. But it's hard sometimes. Like I remember sitting across from people and explaining to them that you do know that black people sold black people, right? Like, and it's
Right.
like for some, it's like that's part of colonizing. Like, but when I said in classroom, that's not what we were taught. We were told that whites went and took people against their
Right.
wills, right? And it's like that's half the truth,
Right.
right? The other half of the truth is that black people, whether it's different tribes and um, prisoners they captured, right? And then they sold those prisoners to, well, started with the Arabs, but then went to the colonizers, the Europeans, right?
Right.
So it's like that's so for you. It's interesting you said that. Has that been a reality for you in the sense of not just history in that sense, but like has that been true for you in just your trajectory in life where you thought that it was going to look like this? This is the way it must look, and then later on discovering there's more to this than what is that? Has that been the case for you?
Well, I mean, I can't completely make the connection perfectly, but I will tell you,
No.
I was in Joliet and West Chicago for the majority of my young life, and being one of the only white kids in my classes, I got to see what history has caused in the way of interaction. You know, I got the crap kicked out of me for being a white kid, right? But it actually made me realize that racism is a very, very devious, bad thing, because at the end of the day, they don't, those kids that were kicking my ass because I was, a white kid, weren't doing it because they hated me. They were doing it because they were taught the history of what happened in reverse. And not only that, we're all fighting in the same, in the same pool. It's that crab in the bucket mentality
Yep.
that, well, for instance, I'll give you a
Yep.
perfect case, and this is in current time. I ran for county council in our county here in Hampton County, and I had done campaigns for other people prior to that, and I'm also fairly well known on the Republican side of things, but I am a more Democratic, left leaning individual. And during the race, one of my Republican opponents decided to put up a sign that attacked two of the Democratic Party candidates that weren't me. They were two of the black candidates. Those candidates have their shortcomings, and there's a lot of going back and forth between the Republican Party and everything. But I get a call from one of those two, and it was one of the other guys running that was on the sign, and he said, "I hope you know that no black person is going to vote for you in this county ever again." Even though I was not the one that put up the sign, even though I was not in any way, shape, or form. In fact, they had actually made themselves believe, or somebody had, that I was the one telling the Republican Party what to do. But here we are. This is what I mean about nuance, semantics, history in general. Things can be folded in a way that can make anybody believe anything, right? I consider myself an ally to everyone. I don't take kindly to hate in any form. It's just not in my blood. I am, if anything, I think I made a video of it a couple days ago. I am a hater of hate. Um, and so I think, going back to your question, when we look at history and the way things went down, I'm quite Irish and English as far as my 23andMe says, right? But
Yeah.
the English did some really terrible things to the Irish. Like, there
Yeah.
were, there's stories of slavery, and there's stories of them passing us out like we were, candy to anybody that wanted to come and pay for us. So I think that the biggest thing with history is finding a way to understand that not everything that you're being told is gospel. Simultaneously being able to understand in current climates, like right now, how this news just came out that the Ukraine hacked X.com.
Mm.
There's no way. Okay, you cannot convince me that Ukraine, with all of their problems, would really go out of their way to attack Twitter, Elon Musk, and take the chance of losing Starlink. So I've been going back and forth with friends, and saying, we need to start considering that maybe this is state television at this point.
Yeah.
This is, we need to stop trusting what we cannot see and what we cannot understand until we get back, to a
Yeah.
to a more stable ground. I hope that answered in any way what you
Yeah.
asked, but
Yeah. It creates actually more follow up questions because um, it is often when we think about racism, at least the way that's communicated, right? It's often talked about through the lens of a minority, right? It's like Hispanic person, Asian person, a black person, but a white person can't experience racism, right? Like I mean, I could find you clips on clips of people saying it is impossible to be racist to a white person, which I know you and I both think that's nonsense. But um, for you specifically, it sounds like there's this pattern of what seems like people taking out their frustration on you. Right? It seems like as young as you have been, it sounds like people are constantly um, taking out their frustration on you. And it's interesting. A little bit ago, you were just saying that you used to get bullied. It sounds like by black people specifically, but
It
it
ended up
is
being everybody towards the end. Don't
okay.
worry.
Yeah, okay. But in this situation, it sounds like you were getting bullied because of your race. How did you get yourself to a position where you could see, I know they're not coming at me. There's something bigger that they're frustrated about, and I
It
just
took
happen to
me.
be
It took me
yeah,
years. It took me years. As a kid, I really thought that, like, I mean, between being a poor kid, right, and then on top of it, just not having the ability, nobody was going to advocate for me.
yeah,
We legitimately, in the middle school I was in, there were three white kids in my entire grade. So they went through the same things. It wasn't quite as bad because I I think that for me, let's go back to that because we can
yeah,
have a little bit of a counseling session for me, an out loud counseling session. But I think that the issue is that I am obstinate and I don't walk away. If I care for you or if I care for what I believe in, I'm going to stay in and I'm going to take my lashes. I'm going to take my ass whoopings. I'm going to do whatever I need to make sure you know that I'm genuinely there for that situation. I'm there for a reason. So, like, when that was happening when I was little, I just considered it the fact that, my dad pulled up in his Crown Vic that was running into the ground that literally sounded like a locomotive because of how bad the engine was about to blow up, right? And it was so embarrassing. I remember that, like, that was literally the way the Crown Vic sounded
yeah,
as we would roll up. So it wasn't just because I was a white guy, but it was a culmination of that frustration that was passed down through generations. And then, fast forwarding to today, when he called and said that to me, I can be as upset
yeah,
as I want to be, but I know what the optics of that are. I'm in marketing and advertising and business, so I understand what the perception looks like when I'm friends with a person from the opposite party and they're putting up, attack signs against other people that are in the party that I'm running. So I understood, and I've never, if anything, it has made me so fiercely anti-racist because you can't help but know what you know. And
mhm,
therefore, if you can't help but know what you know and you don't have the ability to rise above that knowledge, you can't help but to act on that knowledge. And that's a big issue, right? That's why
mm,
that I think that's why a lot of people get mistaken for being one thing or the other because they are trying to shine their light forward, trying to be a part of a situation, but the optics of it from the other person's information, like the other person's history and education and what they know is not the same. They don't see it the same way. I know a guy that said the same thing as this guy, and he was a bad man. So now I know he is a bad man, right? But that if you only know three people, that's going to happen more often, right? But you and I
yeah,
talked about in the beginning, we're so close to everybody else now that we know so many other people. If you take the time to take an experience and get to know people, you'll find that two people that say the same exact things do not always mean the same exact things.
that's true. That's true. I like how you used the word a little bit ago. You said they're light, which I thought was an interesting thing because, and I think if more people thought in that way, it might do us some good in the sense of like, so you have these, what would it be? These people that are running for election, right? And they have certain policies, they have certain things that they want to pass that they believe will better the community, right? But one of the problems I can get into is you can get into that the horse with blinders, right? And you only think that you, as a politician, your policies, yours is the best way. You can't recognize that other people may have a light as well to bring to the table. Why do you think we get into that? What? Why do you think it's so tough for us as humans to kind of like lift our heads up a little bit and possibly see that, hey, this person is fighting, I'm fighting. Maybe this person isn't a bad person, because the fact that they're willing to get their hands dirty, put their reputation on their line, right? Put everything at risk, right? If you have family, you're putting your family on potentially on blast when you run for an office of at any level, right? You're opening yourself to criticism and you're putting yourself in that position. Maybe sometimes, maybe it is the money that people are after, and we know that is quite a motivator, right? And you can really get yourself set up for life if you get into the right. But then there's also a lot of other people that are doing it because they think it is maybe a calling that they have on their life. Maybe this is something, but yet as people, we can almost like you said, the crab in a barrel, we can pull each other down. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it is so hard? Especially because these are typically your most educated. I say educated because I just mean from an academic perspective,
Right?
not
Right.
wisdom. Yeah.
Right. So you said you were adopted from Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Right? Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So
Yep.
let me play that, right? And this is how I do when I consult. I try to go to a base point that we both understand in the best way possible. If you had stayed in Ethiopia, there's a good chance, and I could be completely wrong, right? But there's a good chance you and I would not be talking right now.
I would say almost 100% chance. Yeah.
There's a good chance that you would not be doing a podcast.
No.
There's a good chance that all of those shared memories and experiences that we just talked about that you had with all of those friends and on those sports teams and during school would never have existed.
That's correct.
There's a solid chance that you may not have been even able to communicate with me. Like, we may not have even spoke the same language, or at least been able to, connect the dots to speak the same language, right? And that's not just from a pure language perspective. I mean, from a dynamics of, you might have been, at this point, you might have been head down just trying to get by every day. Okay?
Correct.
If I hadn't gotten out of my parents' house, if I would have stayed home where my brother stayed, and not gone into foster care, equally, you and I would not have been having this conversation. I would not have been worthy of having this conversation. In my mind, maybe even in yours. Not from the perspective of you judging me, just from the perspective of, who's this kid that has lived off the system his entire life and is, he doesn't even know what he's going to do, right?
Yeah.
I think that we need to have a certain level of grace when interacting with other human beings. We need to have a certain level of base understanding that education is very important. Don't get me wrong. But what is far more important than any amount of education is experience. And so fast forward to today, you being adopted, being brought to America, having all of these experiences that you have upped your ability to connect with others, your ability to shine. Your light gets brighter and brighter because you've had all of these opportunities placed in front of you. I think that what we don't always understand is even some of the most educated people didn't have those opportunities. And they're very closed off from having the camaraderie of playing in a team, traveling and seeing the world, living in different houses. Like, I still to this day, when people are like, I'm so sorry you were in foster care, I always rebuttal with, I'm not, and you don't have to be. Because I was able to take a little bit of every one of those foster care homes. I was able to take a little bit from every mother, from every father, from every sibling, from every friend I had at school, from every teacher I had at school, from every bus driver, from every neighbor. And it allowed me to be able to uniquely move through conversations. And I find now, being a 39-year-old man, that had I not done all of that, there's no way that I could be helping a weight loss center hit $593,000 in their first year in a 700 population town, right? Or however, it's a really small town. But my point is, I wouldn't be able to run a coffee shop that is now doing 70% over last year. I wouldn't be able to have raised my children. In fact, maybe not even kept my children, right? Because it's that same dynamic. You usually follow what you were taught. So long way to get to the answer is, I really think that experience differentiates interaction. it doesn't only differentiate interaction, it also makes those brain folds move in different ways, right? Because if go ahead.
No, well, so it made me think of one of my favorite autobiographies I've ever read was Alex Haley on the autobiography of Malcolm X.
Okay.
And he talks about how, so Malcolm X, in short, was a pimp, gets locked up, converts to the nation, becomes a Muslim, ends up seeing white people as the devil, period. That's white people are the devil, or children of the devil, right? And fast forward, one day he goes on a trip to Mecca. He gets on his trip to Mecca. He's talking about his experience. He gets on this plane and he's flying and he gets to Mecca, or he gets to the other side, and he's walking around, gets to Mecca, he's walking around and realizes there's white people amongst the Muslims. And he's like, what the heck? This is different, right? And they're like, nobody could care less what race he is, right? And so he's just, and then it dawned on him that, oh my goodness, racism is, what's happening in America isn't happening around the whole world.
It's unique to that
And
location,
so,
right?
and so if you look at his speech prior to going to Mecca, that's when a lot of his tactics ends up changing, is when he comes back from Mecca, and you see him engaging with white people differently than he did prior to it. So and a story to pair with that, right, is one of my favorite stories. It talks about how these scientists these educators are looking at this young man who's stealing nuts and bolts from a train track, right? And they're like, okay, well, what's the problem here, right? And they think his problem is education. He just needs to be educated. And he goes saying that, what they don't realize is by the time he graduates, he'll know how to steal the whole train, right? So it's like knowledge, more information doesn't necessarily lead to a better behavior, right? If anything, it will enhance whatever's already present. But there is something about when an individual has an experience. And so when I hear you say what you've said, I was like, immediately I just went to Malcolm X and just his experience of seeing what is out there and that it is possible for whites and blacks to get along, right? And so I thought that was dead on to kind of what you're saying. So, okay, so let's transition a little bit towards. It sounds like, I mean, did you go immediately into starting your businesses, or what was your first business? And walk us through that a little bit.
So I was a retail lifer when our oldest son, Noah, was born with gastroschisis in 2008.
What is that exactly?
Is
Yeah.
the abdominal wall doesn't close, and the intestines, both small and large, grow outside of the body. We were 18 and 22, my wife and I, and it was crazy, right? Like terrifying. Experience, though, made us very strong, and it actually is the reason that we, on a whim, moved from Buffalo, New York, down to Hilton Head, South Carolina. I transferred with Dollar General. Bad stuff went on down there because I tried to, bring some accountability, and they didn't want that, and they lied their way out of me having a job. So I went and had a few other jobs. I got a store manager position at a Brookstone, and then I worked at Jose Bank, and I worked at all these other jobs, and finally realized that maybe while I was the problem, I wasn't the problem for the exact reasons that I thought I was, right? Like I'm meant for bigger and better. So we actually, that was when I started World Minor League Football in 2012.
Wow.
I get
What was it? Say it again. What's it called?
World Minor League Football, WMLF. You can actually find it on Facebook. We don't run it anymore. In fact, we only did a year, but when you hear this story, you're going to be like, no way that this is true, but you can actually ask Adrian to verify everything I say.
Okay.
So I get on Facebook after I had started a football team, and it was supposed to be in the GDFL, which was our main competitor for WMLF when I started it. And they really screwed us. We were a bad team, but then what they did was we were getting ready to face another first year team, and they decided to change the schedule, and they put a team that had won the championship 2 years prior on our schedule, like a team that was ranked in the country, like in the top 3. They beat us 98-0.
Sounds like when Alabama plays Oak Harbor High School.
Yeah, man, they absolutely wrecked us. They came with like 65 strong. I played in that game, even though I was the owner of the team. And sorry, I've got to.
Okay.
Yeah, they're doing a landline. Yeah. Yep. Sorry, we've got the cable people coming today, so I don't
Look
mean
at
to.
look at
I don't mean to. So anyway, I don't like being bullied. I don't like being had. So I was like, we're going to start a league. And I still remember one of the first conversations I had was with a guy in another league. He was interested in hearing what I was going to do. And I said, we'll have a NFL stadium for the championship game. And he's like, no, that's unheard of. Nobody's ever done that in minor league football. You're not going to have it. Like, just get a good high school to partner up with and you'll be fine. So I kept that in the back of my, the feather in the cap, right? And I was like, I'm going to pull this out to prove everything at the end of it.
yeah.
So a couple months into me posting about it and talking about it, I get an email from a guy named Adrian Wilkins.
Okay, you did.
And Adrian goes, hey, I'm really interested in this. I think what you're, talking about and what you're planning to do is great. I wanna know how much I'd get paid, to do this and so on and
Is
so
this one
forth.
is at ESPN?
This is right after ESPN, literally right
Okay,
after ESPN.
okay.
And I was like, well, Adrian, respectfully, I want to pay everybody, right? Like that would be the best thing in the world, but this is a nonprofit and we are just starting up. I just need people that are willing to get in, get their hands dirty and make this something special. So he told me, he's like, my wife is not going to be okay with this. Fair. He's like, fair. I don't think Fair is going to be good with this. But I was like, well, if you're able to, then fine. So on, so forth. And we ended up starting the league. So we ended up
How
having
do you
our
go
first.
about doing that?
So it's crazy.
Like how
It's
much
crazy
like
because
how much money do you need to raise, and how do you find the players?
So believe it or not, I bootstrapped the whole thing.
Wow. Okay.
What we did was we contacted teams around the country and we said, hey, low fees, $350 to get in, and have insurance on your team and have a place to play, and we'll put you in the schedule. So we go through, we're doing advertising like Geico at the time. Like, you remember the old Geico commercials where they'd be like, how much wood does a woodchuck? Yeah. So we literally would go and we'd change that to football. Right. So like, if you go through World Minor League Football's Facebook, you'll get a good laugh. So we ended up having our season. And it culminated in a championship game at Cowboys Stadium.
You did it.
Yeah, I did it. So, and I know that I missed the nitty gritty in between, but like I promise, if you go and look at the World Minor League Football page and you actually like just take it all in, you're gonna be like, what? How did this all happen? I've got a picture of my middle child, Julian, on the star as a baby, like crawling on the star at Cowboys Stadium. We had it the entire day. We had an all-star game. We had our championship game, which was between our Dallas team and one of our Georgia teams. Oh, says we're trying to reconnect. Make sure you have a state. Okay,
no, good. No, you're good. Yeah, you're good.
So yeah, that was funny because nobody assumed it was going to happen. We of course, the universe gives you some great things, but the universe also has to take away a little bit. When we got there, it was like 40, I think like 40-mile-per-hour winds, 30 something degrees in Dallas. Like when you tried to come into the open, because at Dallas Stadium, the front doors are big, giant glass doors. It was hard to open the doors with how bad this ice storm was blowing, and there was ice everywhere. So most of the people that were going to come didn't get to come, which was sad. But yeah, so that actually was the first success that I had, and I walked away from it because I am an idiot and I get bored. For lack of a better way to put it. I mean, it wouldn't have made me money, but it was something I definitely cherished. But that was what allowed me
still going
to. No, we shut it down. It was 1 year, and we just went out with a bang. I actually love the idea of.
You know how incredible that is, like to come up with a vision like that, to create your own football league, get people around you, and then to do the impossible of taking over. I mean, there's no better stadium. Don't get me wrong. It
was new at the time.
Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
Yeah.
It was also new at the time. I was only 25.
That's what I'm saying. That's impressive part. The thing that impresses me is the fact that you put your mind to something like this and you decided, I'm going to get it done. You got the Dallas Stadium at the end of it all, so you got to put like a bow on it. And I don't know if I'll ever meet another person ever in my life. I think I will die before I meet somebody that has done something like that. You know what I mean? Like that's how insane it is.
Yeah, well, going back to remember your statement, we remember things from when we were like 15 and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. That
Yeah.
went so wildly successful in such a short period of time that I don't remember half of it. I legitimately, it was just like this perfect convergence of people and places and everything just happening at once. And it's such great memories. Adrian and I have never met in person, but I would consider him one of my best friends. If you know,
You guys
like
still have not met in person?
no, we still haven't met in person. In fact, we almost did a few years back when my wife and I had our 10-year wedding renewal. But I think that he was on a cruise or something happened during that time, which is sad. But yeah, no, we've still never met. But I don't know. You saw how Adrian introduced me in the messenger. Like I
Yeah.
agree. Like it's the same. Um, I would trust that man basically with my life. I don't know too many people that I can say that about.
Okay, so the fun little question to throw in there because I heard somebody once say this. They said that he says that there's no relationship like a friendship. He says a friendship he actually puts even above marriage, which I thought was very interesting. And I asked the guy, I was like, why is that? And one of the reasons he said was because friendship is one of those things that you choose to be in, right? But there's really nothing like if you're true with somebody, there's really nothing that the other person can do that will make you wanna walk, like, you know what I mean, like it doesn't really demand anything. You can
Right.
walk out anytime you want, but yet you choose to stay, but there's no contract holding you to this. And he talks about how it also in a true friendship you can be vulnerable beyond ways that you can be vulnerable even to your spouse, because there are certain things that you got to be careful how you communicate. But when you talk to your friend, he says there is no, like, you can literally have, you can say whatever you want in front of me, and if I'm truly your friend and we have that relationship. So I don't know, I heard that and I'm like, dude, everything in me says that there's no stronger relationship than a marriage. And I'm
But
like, the
that's
more
why
I
you,
look.
well, to boost off of that though, that's why you
No.
try to find your best friend in a marriage, right? Because if you guys, and I don't mean to go off
No,
task,
this is
but
how it works, man. This is
my
how
wife and
conversation
I,
works.
yeah, right. My wife and I, before we were even together, would share money. Like as friend, like, hey, I want to get something from McDonald's. Can I borrow a couple bucks from you? And she'd be like, yeah, no problem. And then vice versa, right? Hey, I need a ride here. Can you take me over there? And it was always from the get very like unforced, right? How many
Yeah.
relationships do you see they don't even share money? Like, and it blows my mind,
Yep.
right? Like that blows
Yep.
my mind because if you can't share money with the person you're going to spend the rest of your life with, chances are there's a reason that you're not going to share money with them, and it's not healthy, right? But with
Yeah.
friendship, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I've got a friend that he's going to laugh when I mention him. David, he is a Trump supporter, and I am not a Trump supporter. To make that clear, I'm not going to judge anybody that is, and I'm not going to,
Yeah.
I don't want to get too deep into politics, but I'm very straightforward, and I always come with receipts. So if you believe something
No. Oh.
and I care about you, I will make
Yeah.
sure you know what the truth is, right?
Yep.
And so I bury him sometimes. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
am
Yeah.
like cruel and unusual at times, and he's always just like like he'll punch back every once in a while, but it's never a fight, right? And I even said to my
No.
wife, I was like, I got to keep this guy in my life because he is uniquely capable of handling my brand of truth and light.
Mm.
And we disagree on almost everything political. As far as like family and everything else is almost perfect. Sorry, I had to put the jacket on. The
No, you're
office
good.
is a
You're
little
good.
chilly this morning. Forgot to turn on the heat. But anyway, yeah, it's but I think that whoever said that is to a certain extent absolutely correct because how sad is it when a friendship ends? Like
Yeah.
especially if it's just a slow burner that wasn't either side's fault.
No.
And you live with that, right?
Yeah. No. I've found that. I remember I was talking to a counselor. This is like 7 years ago, I think, or 6 years ago, maybe. And I remember sitting down and talking with the counselor, and it would have been closer to no 2016, so almost 9 years ago. So I studied psychology in high school or in college, and I thought that I could read minds at the end of it all, but it wasn't really a thing. So it was a little disappointing. But I was trying to determine whether I wanted to go in like, do I want to go into counseling actually, or am I just going to waste this degree? And so I was sitting with a counselor, and she was kind of almost like job shadowing her. And for at this time around, depression was like really amping up in the sense of like the awareness of it, and it's almost like soon as it's like one day, it felt like one day you just woke up, and then suddenly it's like everybody around me was depressed, and I was like, whoa. And she said to me something that was very fascinating. She said, Josh, and she was a counselor for the university, so kids can go see her. And this was at Washington State University, and was saying how she's like, a lot of kids see me all the time for all sorts of problems, depression being one of the highest. And she said this to me. She said that she believes somewhere around 90% of all the kids that struggle with depression, she said if they had one close best friend, they would have no need for her. And I was just like, man, just one friendship, one close friendship, and there'd be no need for her. But she exists because relationships like that don't exist as much anymore. Yep. So it's a gift that, when you have something like that. But to hear your relationship with Adrian and you guys haven't met, like it even actually makes the story even more powerful. That the relationship even more, like even stronger, and almost gives hope for people that you can develop those kinds of relationships now, and the things that technology can do. But so it's really, I want to just emphasize the point again that it's beyond impressive that you were able to build a league like that and get it done, and you accomplish your objective. And unfortunately, one of the problems that comes with people that are entrepreneur minded is that they get bored very quickly. So where did this adventure take you next?
So after that, we went to DNA Sportswear, which Adrian and Dre, which is the other guy that is our trio, the ones that we used to do the podcast with. We went off and we started a sportswear company. And the cool thing with that is you already have all of your customers in place. You have all of those leagues and all of those teams.
Is it Sports Bar or what was
it? DNA Sportswear. Yep. And I think my Facebook is still up for that as well. No longer run. It's still a business, but we aren't doing anything with it at the moment. And the main reason that is that's part of the hero story too. So we went into that. We did about 60,000 in our first year right off the bat, and this was back in like 2014, I think. And then my co-founder from the UK decided to rob us blind. And absolutely crush the business. In fact, to this day, I'm not allowed to have a PayPal account because this man ripped off customers, ripped off suppliers, and I wasn't aware enough at the time as a 26, 27-year-old guy what was going on in the background. Yep.
Whoa. Okay.
Yep. So that was sad because we were ready, like genuinely ask Adrian and Dre when I think you'll probably talk to Dre soon too, but you talk to these guys and they'll tell you we were ready to go after Under Armour. Like we had one of the largest little league football teams in California as one of our customers. Wow. Like we were doing really well, and then that all happened, and that's actually what put me into the hero's journey. You hear about it all the time, right? That actually put me into a downspin for about 5 years where I didn't do anything. I just stayed home, took care of my kids. My wife started her business and was working, and I kind of went into hermit mode for about 5 years. So that was that stunk. But cool thing with that is
was that from backlash you received from people, or was it like people coming after you, or was it more of just like a heartbreak in the sense of like your pursuit just getting crushed? Or
it was it was definitely a little bit of both because I will make mistakes every day for the rest of my life. I will make mistakes, and I understand that. But I am very averse to making mistakes that hurt my standing. Mainly because if you get to know me a little while longer, Joshua, you'll find that I'm a very straightforward person. I do not pull punches. I do not. If I care for you, I wish I was a politician. Sadly, that's why I'm such a bad politician, right? Because I'm so honest. But I think that it was a matter of there were a lot of people that I had to converse with and apologize to that I shouldn't have had to apologize to, and that I'm sure did not believe me. And there's something about that, right? When you know you're telling the truth, but you also simultaneously know the other person does not believe you because of the actions of someone else, or, whatever happened along the way.
The
That and
ability not to control narrative can be very challenging for someone that's telling the truth when you can't
Yeah,
control the
well, and
narrative.
especially
That's hard.
especially if you have OCD and ADHD like I do, and my OCD is not very strong, but I don't, if I'm telling you the truth and I can read that you aren't believing me, it's almost impossible for me to walk away. Like
Yeah.
I have like this innate want to be like, please just let me get inside your brain enough so that you know that I'm not lying to you, right? And
Yeah.
that comes with, risk aversion and all that other stuff. I'm not too terribly scared to take risks with money. In fact, I don't think that I have an ounce of fear in me to take
Mm.
risk with money. I share that trait with a lot of entrepreneurs, but what I don't share with a lot of entrepreneurs is the ability to uh, accidentally or purposefully harm other people to gain things in return. I just don't have that gene, and that's actually an issue. Like that's probably why I'm not a billionaire or at least a millionaire quite yet. But now, I think that it's important to remember too that I was a 26-year-old guy, and if I was 39 at the time, I would have buried all of that quickly. Like it would have, we would have been moving right along. I had the LLC in America. He didn't have any bearing on me from a legal standpoint. I could have proven all of the things that he did and easily, put that all on blast and got myself out of it. But I was so young that I was like, oh my gosh, my entire world has crashed
Yeah.
down. And of course, that hurt my wife's confidence in me. That hurt my confidence in me. And I'm already one of those human beings because of foster care that is not always quite as confident as I come off as, because there's still always that voice from every foster parent and every parent telling me I suck. I mean, in fact, my last foster parents tried to adopt me, and when they did that, the head of the agency told them that I was, I can't remember exactly how she worded it, but essentially I was useless and they'd regret it. And so my natural,
Makes you wonder why somebody like that is in that position that they're in. I never
right,
understood that. Or like teachers that tell their kids you'll amount to nothing. And I'm just like, why are you a teacher? Like what is your you're supposed to help kids believe you're supposed to see something in them and you're supposed to push them. It's I never but you hear this quite often. Even Adrian I remember we talked to him and he had a story like that where it was like this teacher told him he's an amount to nothing. I'm like, why are you a teacher?
right,
This is
right, like,
clearly not your right place for you.
right. Yeah, it's sad. But ultimately, at least now that I'm older, going, kind of playing that out, now that I'm older, I realize that people make mistakes first and foremost, so maybe she was having a bad day. I wouldn't probably say that under a bad, in any
That's what I'm
certain
saying. Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
but like it has helped me with my children, like when I get a little over the top with them, I know that what's most important is to set the tone that an apology and an explanation as to why we got to that place gives that experience for both of us, my son and I, or any one of my sons and I, to go back to that position and start again and try to figure out how we can, do this in a way that is respectful for both parties, but simultaneously teaches what you're trying to teach, right? Because in a lot of cases, they'll say things like that and they're trying to get a point across, but the issue is as a child, you're only hearing the bad part. You're not, you're not getting the point, and without any extra, uh, words of encouragement to go ahead with,
Yeah.
you kind of just think that you're that piece of garbage that they called you, essentially.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. So you, at 25, you have a football league. 26, you have a clothing company. I have a feeling that you did not stop there. So
No, yeah.
talk to us now.
So we started my wife's photography company, and I think she's in year 8, if I'm correct. So that was towards the middle to the end part of me going through my 5 years of depression and kind of not feeling good. And so she started, her first year was like 6,000. Her second year was $47,000, and then her third year went over 60. So um, we find that even when I'm not the head of the company, as long as I'm kind of in the vicinity of, I can usually manufacture a fairly solid business. And now she is just killing it. She has her photography business. She has an entertainment business. Um, I've got a marketing company, marketing and advertising company, print services. I've got a consultation business. I've got an AI business. I've got our coffee shop, which is Mad Hooter Coffee House in Barnville, South Carolina,
Wait, what's it
and
called?
Mad Hooter Coffee House, and it's a play on the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland, except for it's an owl, so it's the Mad
Okay.
Hooter. Yeah, and
Mad,
that was a twist on words. Yeah, you got to look it up. That was actually a twist on words to get people interested, because in a small rural white community, hearing the word Hooter kind of throws people off, but it actually
yeah,
benefited us because they were like, "Wait, what's that all about?" And yeah, we're in year 3 uh,
I
with
typed
that.
Mad HO, and that's the first thing that popped up.
Is it? Yep. I've been
Yeah,
working. I've been working. And
yeah.
even though we're in a
In
town of
South
only
Carolina, right?
1,600 people, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's
Oh,
our
nice.
current, you'll see some of the videos I do on there and everything, but also, so when we
So
moved,
pizza there?
yep. So
Whoa,
let's get to that story, right?
please, yeah.
So
Sounds more
we,
like a restaurant than a coffee shop.
right, right. So we get to, we were in Hilton Head for 12 years, and we decided that we wanted a yard and everything. So we decided to put a radius of an hour away from us in. And Varnville was where we put in an offer on our house sight unseen because it was during the market going crazy, and we got the house. For the first 6 months, we didn't meet anybody, not a person, right? No intent to really do anything other than live off of, we had really good money coming in from photography and everything else. So my son Julian had an event at the gazebo down in town for Christmas time, and my youngest got really sick with a stomach bug, and I was like, "Bud, we're probably not going to get to go. Things are rough." But I was like, "Wait a minute, I need to take care of Julian and actually make sure he's able to have his fun and do his things too." And I promise this is getting somewhere, Josh.
You're good.
But
Following.
I said to Noah, my oldest, I was like, "Bud, just watch Gabriel. Make sure if he gets too bad, you call me. But otherwise, he's just in a bit of pain and he just needs to rest." So I take Julian down, and prior to this, I had seen a building in town that I fell in love with, and it's called Market Square. It was actually in um, the movie Forrest Gump, and I didn't know anything about that. In fact, a couple of the buildings in this town were in Forrest Gump.
That's
Rewind a
cool.
little. When I was in the home before foster care, I, for whatever reason, became enamored with Forrest Gump. I actually, every time, the 4 weeks that I was there, every day that I got to choose a movie, I chose Forrest Gump. Just eerie the way the universe kind of works for you, right? So
Good.
anyway, I wanted to start a like a community center in this building, and I went and looked at the building, fell in love with it, but realized it was a little bit out of where we wanted to spend in this small town. But I was like, maybe I'll talk to the mayor someday if I get in touch, or if I see him, because the owner said, the mayor sometimes gives out loans, so on and so forth. So anyway, not even thinking about it, I go down, Julian sings, and then before and after Julian sang, the mayor got up and spoke
Mm.
at the event. So out of wild me being me, I was just like, I'm gonna put my light forward and I'm gonna see what happens. Well, I go
Yeah.
over and I'm like, "Hey, my name's Tom Dickerman. I really want to start some things here in town, a community center. I really like Market Square, but I'd just love to talk to you." And he actually set me up in a meeting to just talk with him a week and a half later. And then he's like, "Well, next meeting I want to bring Faye Gooding in. She's a part of the town council." And so this is how the world works. If you want something, or if you put yourself in position to do something, you will always get what you ask for, unequivocally. You cannot convince me of anything different. So I go into this meeting, Faye's there, and so is the mayor, Nat. And I tell him, like, how cool would it be to put a drive-in down through here? And I'm telling him all my wildest ideas. And usually people go, "Okay, this guy's crazy. Let's, move along."
Yeah.
Well, no, in fact, they were both like, "These are great ideas." And the conversation went great. Well, Faye introduced me to her group called Hampton County CAR, which is Hampton County Residents for the Active Restoration and Revitalization of Hampton County, which ended up being why I ran for county council, why I was connected with both the Republican and the Democratic parties, and why I was absolutely like pushed in front of a freight train of Hampton County doing, right? This county
Yeah.
that we're in. Coincidentally, that's also Faye is who we bought the coffee shop buildings from down the line, and the reason that we have all of this down in Main Street and why we're doing what we're doing. So now fast forward to now, since 21, we
Yeah.
went from having no property whatsoever to buying a house. We now have 4 buildings on Main Street in our town. We are in our 3rd year as the coffee shop. We moved ice cream and pizza, which was the first business we opened up here, over to coffee. So now it's just like a cafe that does a little bit of everything, but
Everything.
everything
Yeah.
that we do is really good. Like we've got the best pizza in the area. Pizza Hut just closed in our county.
What's it?
And now we only have a mom and pop competitor. And truth be told, they're not gonna, if I decide that they're not gonna be there very long, they're not gonna be there very long. I know that probably sounds terrible, but I'm in cold-blooded killer mode because I don't know if, well, there's no chance Adrian mentioned this because he didn't know until after you guys talked. But back on the 18th of last month, I almost died. I had H. pylori, which is like a bacterial thing that a lot of us can have. It doesn't always affect everybody the same way. But it was giving me like autoimmune issues early, right? Like, and causing things that it shouldn't. So I went to get medicated for it, and the meds, very strong antibiotics. My body doesn't react to antibiotics very well as it is. Made me so sick that I lost 8 pounds in the first 7 days of taking these meds. And I ended up in the hospital, in and out of consciousness, like thinking that I would probably rather be dead than alive, admittedly.
Yeah.
But it was laying in that bed. I was like, if I get out of this bed, I'm going to come out of here on a tear. I am going to give every one of my descendants everything they could ever dream of having available to them the moment I leave this bed. And since then, I mean, I could show you the stats on Mad Hooter. Mad Hooter's grown, like, I think we gained like over 100 followers and likes and within like the last couple weeks. And mind you, we're in a town of only 1,700 people. You know, getting growth like that is fairly hard, especially once you get up towards the 1,500 likes mark.
Yeah.
Going higher than that in a small area is really difficult.
You're maxing out.
You're right, exactly. Like we have more likes on our page right now, or at least roughly the same amount of likes on our page as we have population in the town we're
That's wild.
Yeah. So but it has woke up a beast. I wanna teach, like we're having a concert out back in May. A local band called us and said, or messaged us on Facebook and said, hey, we'd love to do a concert. I know we kind of talked about it, so we're clearing that. We're going to put a stage. We've got a barn out back, which funny enough is 69 Main Street. And I always joke because for a while I was a big fan of Elon, and his numbers are 420 and 69 just out of, you know, the funniness.
Yeah.
But yeah, the barn is actually 69 Main Street. It's like, man, the universe just keeps winking at me every opportunity it gets. Suffice to say, my goal moving forward is to give our community and everybody in it an opportunity to see fun, to have something to enjoy and look forward to, because I don't know how much you know or have even heard, and probably not much, but there's international news that came from Hampton County, and it was a family that has basically been the top family in the area. They're lawyers. One of them was just indicted on killing his wife and his child, and on their property right outside of the county, and it's international news.
Pretty recent.
Yeah, it's called the Murdoch Murdoch murders, Murdaugh. And if you look that up, it has taken this community and thrown them into consistent turmoil. And then to compound that, our local government I want to make sure I word this right. There was a lot of money misspent to the tune of over $5 million that was supposed to go towards a rec center. And now they don't have a rec center. So my light, you know, as we've talked about through this conversation, I want my light to move forward to give kids in this community an opportunity to have a fun place to go. In fact, right now, the reason she came over here, my wife, Alicia, is to ask what exactly the guy that was installing the new internet is installing, because we are now doing 1,000 by 1,000. We're doing a gig speed in the middle of rural America so that I can start doing video game competitions. I can do, like high end podcasts, like when you and I talk next, because we're going to just put that out into the universe. It's
Yeah,
going to
come on.
be 10 times the quality, and we're not going to have any slowdown during the conversation. There ain't going to be any disconnects. I want to essentially build a Universal Studios experience in the middle of nowhere. And so
Do you feel like this is a vision that, first of all, I'm floored with like every person that we've interviewed. I'm floored with you know, the vision and the care that's placed in individuals' hearts. I'm so thankful that like it's not all the same. But what really fascinates me with the road that you're on right now is um you could take the sunset route. You could just say, you know what, let me just focus inwardly. I've done enough already for the world. The world's kicked me enough. My family doesn't need to go down this journey. And then when I hear you say that, your wife comes in here because she's trying to make sure that things are set up, that, the as far as with the internet, making sure that all makes sense. You're looking at what you experienced just less than a month ago, and you're looking at that as okay, the universe has given me an opportunity to wake up to certain things, realizing that tomorrow's not promised. So what can I do today? And then to be able to look at the heartbreak that Hampton has gone through, and for you to be able to say, okay, what does moving forward look like? And for you to see yourself in a position of serving and wanting the next generation to experience something that will paint a better picture and better vision and a better opportunity for, that's very it's really refreshing to be able to hear there are people like that. Is that a vision that you've shared with very many people? Like, does the community know, or do you feel like that's something that's just somewhat in the wraps and only a few people kind of know?
I have shared with a lot of close confidants. However, I have, when if you do look through
Yeah.
like, Mad Hooter and everything, ever since that happened in the hospital, I hate videos. I hate doing videos. I have always convinced myself that I'm not a forward facing person. I like to be in the background, but
You're welcome.
right. But naturally, I am fairly capable. I am a good storyteller. In fact, my friend Noah Alexander, who was the youngest county council member ever in South Carolina, who is somebody that's befriended me since we've been here, asked me the other day and just said, why is it that you keep saying that you're not a forward facing person, you don't want to be out front, when that's what you're best at? And so, to answer your question, more people know now because I took that to heart. And as I've been coached by Dan Martell, I've realized that it's just an excuse for me to do less work by
Mm,
saying, I'm not a forward facing, I don't like doing videos, right? I can be ugly as sin. I can still do videos. I can be frail. I can still do
yeah.
videos. And like anything, any excuse I actually put in my own way is on me, right? Like, so a lot more people know, but I'm definitely going to push that more across the entire county, because I realized during my run that that's not what I'm supposed to do. I'm not supposed to be a politician. I'm not supposed to be boxed up. If Elon, for all of his infinite stupidity lately, as far as I'm concerned, he has proven one thing though. You can buy a presidency as an
Mm,
entrepreneur. You can, and not in the literal sense, but that man is legitimately running most of our government systems at the moment, right? And so
yeah.
I want to take that as a nod to, I can do the same thing, particularly in a county that there are only 20,000 people in. I don't want to buy the county, but I want to give the kids in this county and the young adults in this county, and even the adults in this county, a chance to enjoy their time while they're here, but also to be able to step out of that reality, that monotony, that sadness, that, I want them to be able to walk onto our property during one of our concerts and feel like they are somewhere completely different. Um, Go ahead.
So you said you have kids. How many kids do you have? What is your message? Like when you're doing what you're doing, how have you seen your actions and decision? How have you seen that impact your kids?
So one thing that we do, and one I read a couple months ago on Twitter, this person was like, you're gonna regret. He was talking to another entrepreneur. You're gonna regret not having spent time with your kids. You're gonna regret not having, taken time with them. Our kids work the coffee shop. My 16-year-old is there at least 1/3 of the time. My 12-year-old takes orders behind the
Okay.
counter. My 9-year-old, he's not quite there yet, but he's in and around. And in fact, we actually just extended hours to 8 o'clock on the weekends, but we're only open inside until 3. So you can't sit down and eat past 3. And the main reason we did that is because we want time with our kids in the shop. That's another reason I got the internet. Is so that they can play video games with us, board games with us. They can do their homework because they're all homeschooled on Connections Academy. My children, I hope that as this moves forward, that they understand that everything is afforded to them, but not given. I will never give my children anything because giving weakens the soul. Not from the giver's side, but from the receiver's side. If you have nothing to attain, you're not going to attempt to attain anything, right? And I could be wrong. I'm not going to act like that's unequivocal truth, but if there's one thing I've learned is I had nothing. And probably the main reason I kept going is because I wanted something. I wanted something, anything, right? To feel good, to be able to enjoy. But at the end of it all, it's my hope that my kids understand that they have an infinite path to move forward. They could work a job for the rest of their life. If that's what they want to do, that's completely fine. They don't have to be entrepreneurs. But, if we franchise these coffee shops the way that I envision, in fact, I'm getting ready to help franchise the weight loss center that I consult for. Like they're going to have paths forward aplenty. They will never
Yeah.
have to worry about, Dad, I don't know how to do something because Dad will find them the answer. Um, I won't give them anything for free because I go back to, I just have found how destructive that can actually be.
Yeah.
Um, but it's my hope to try to, precisely answer your question as well as I can, that they see power and they understand that power lives within them.
Yeah. It's I hear what you're saying. Do you feel like your kids, one of the biggest things they learn from you? Because when I'm listening to you talk, right, and I'm like, I felt like you've lived so many lives, and it sounds like with you, it's almost like failure is acceptable in the sense of like if you try something and you fail at it, if anything they can learn is that their dad knows how to get back up and try another thing, go after another
Yeah.
thing. Do you feel like that's something that they understand pretty well, or is that something you feel like you have to remind them?
Sadly, it's something that they understand very little.
Mm,
Because there's something about being a kid that came from survival and raising
mm.
kids that aren't survival kids that's very difficult, right?
It's challenging. It is challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
It's not
my
something you can really teach, though. It feels
No,
like.
well, and it isn't. And I try to teach by action. I try
Yeah.
to teach by repetition. I try to teach by understanding. When I talk to my oldest, Noah, who is an immensely talented artist, who is a lot like his grandfather. So my grandfather was a nuclear physicist, and my grandmother was an art teacher. And then I got skipped down to the generation where my parents were
Yeah.
nothing, right? But so the brains are there, but much like my grandfather, he lacks common sense in a big way. And so for him, he's very capable of seeing what other people are doing wrong or need to work on, but he doesn't have
Self awareness.
the self-awareness required by experience, right? Because experience is really what gives you that in most cases. A few of us come out of the box pretty sensical and pretty understanding of the world. But with him, my biggest concern is I tell him all the time, bud, an iota, a little tiny bit of
Yeah.
accountability and self awareness will get you to the top of the world really fast. But the upside with him is he's got nothing slows him down, nothing affects him. You could rip him apart 1 minute and the next minute he's in your room telling you about Fortnite, right? Whereas my two younger ones, the issue is because I was the one at home most with my two younger ones, they're very empathetic, but they're also very, very much not like that. They're very out of the box good with humans, but emotionally they are so off the rails, like
Yeah.
everything, you look at them the wrong way and they start crying, or something happens, it's the worst day ever. So it's just a matter of weaving in between personalities, for lack of a better way to put it, and trying to instill, if there's anything I could instill in my children and just in humans in general, is self-awareness, accountability, and finding experiences. Um,
There's
yeah.
those things you're saying, self-awareness, creating experiences. Have you ever heard of like rite of passage moments? Have you heard of these? Like you learn about these like in civilization. So let me give you an example of a rite of passage moment. Uh, so there's a story that talks about how father, this is an old tribe. I think I might have shared this in another part, but there's a Native American tribe. Forgot which one it is, but they do this practice where the son, for him to become a man, he has this moment that he has to experience, which is he has to go out in the woods by himself and he has to sit. He go down the woods by himself. Well, his father will kind of guide him, and he has to sit in front of a rock. Okay, he could be on the rock. He's sitting on, and he has to face forward. This is in the middle of the woods in the dark. But the one thing he can't do is he can't turn around. He can't look behind him. He
Okay.
has to like look out in the woods. And obviously, when he's sitting there by himself, he starts to hear things, right? Obviously, his imagination starts to go wild. So there's like this wrestling that he has to do.
Right.
And he can hear things in his back, but whatever it is, he can't turn around, right? And the idea of it is, right? And then in the morning, eventually he's going to fall asleep. And the next morning he wakes up, right? And when the sun rises, he can turn around, look behind him. And little does he know, like 10 feet behind him is his father the whole time watching over him. Right. So it's these experiences that you create so that your kids have to overcome some challenge. Right. Yep. And I read a book on, it was fatherhood, and I forgot the author's name. And I actually had our dad's group here locally read the book, but it talks about creating rite of passage moments so that your kids understand that they are no longer this. They have now passed on to this. And one of the moments he has is the wife actually takes the kid out for like breakfast, and she has a conversation with him that says, "Hey, we've come to the end of what I can teach you, and now you're stepping into what your father's going to be able to teach you." So it's almost like you get your spouse is kind of involved at this moment where it's like she has to understand that there's a new adventure that is at hand, and she has to almost like, congratulations, son, like you made it this far. You are now going to start learning things that the father. And so for you didn't have somebody that gave you those rite of passage moments. You actually had to just create those for yourself. And I think essentially what the book is talking about is like, how do you create those moments for your kids? Well, you have to be intentional. Your kids they're not going to have those obstacles in the same way because you naturally are allowing them not
standing
to
behind the rock.
Well,
Yeah.
well, in your situation, unfortunately, in your situation, what I'm saying is like you are raising your kids in certain ways where they're not going to experience certain challenges,
Right?
Because you've gone through those doors for them.
Yep.
So how do you create those challenges? How do you create those moments for your kids so that they can know that okay, we're in the next stages? So like
right.
Your kids that are at the coffee shop, right? It's like how do you create moments for them to realize maybe it's just simply sitting down with your oldest and being able to be like, hey, like let's look at the journey you've gone down. Let's take them. Let's take a step back and help them see what they have. When you hear rite of passage moments, right? What does that do for you when you hear that? I'm sure you've heard of it in different variations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that goes back to remember like what was it, 300 when the kid has to go out and fight the wolf or whatever it is. Yeah.
I don't even know what that thing was.
Right. I don't necessarily know what it looks like, but I will tell you the coffee shop has been a little bit of that because Noah's very introverted, my oldest, and so I think that the rite of passage there was, I'm going to leave you out on an island and you're going to have to deal with customers. You're going to have to be friendly. You're not going to be able to be short with them or ignore them. You're going to have to hop up, be smiley, be in direct opposition of your personality to do what's best for the business, but also for you. And he has come around so much. Like, you can even tell when his inflection comes out, it's less forced. Like
Yeah.
before, it would be like almost a groan when he was being kind and being like talkative, because that's just not his personality unless he's talking with friends. But it's a great question, because for my younger two, I find on a normal basis, if I'm even remotely hard on them, they break down. And it breaks me too, right? Because I'm like, oh gosh. And I find myself every once in a while saying, you don't even know what it was like and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, they don't. They don't
Yeah.
know. And
Yep.
they can't know. And I try to, especially with the way the world's going right now, we don't know what's going to happen from moment to
Yep.
moment, right? We could be living in the Dust Bowl in the next 5 years for all we know. And
Yep.
my hope is that, through sports and through school and through interactions with friends, family, that they'll pick up some of these things. But I'd be lying if I told you I thought I had a good answer on that. I don't
Yep.
know how to transfer that knowledge. I can tell stories. That's what a lot of our ancestors did, right? Like, well, this is what happened to dad when he was little, or this is, and I've
Yeah.
told them, like they will, talk about my father and be like, he was so mean to you and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, keep perspective on the fact that his mom died when he was 16, and
Yeah.
he didn't, he was the youngest on top of it. So what, he dropped out of school, he had to start working right away. His dad was an alcoholic that used to beat the brakes off of him. So what do you really expect? And I try to, I found too, being very open and honest with your kids is important. That grandmother that's an alcoholic, I know you want to keep that away from the kids. I know you want to, kind of keep that under
Mm.
wraps, because it's a form of embarrassment for you as well. Is that worse, to be honest with your kids, and have the same things happen to them as happened to you because you didn't fair warn them that's how that person acted?
Mm.
So that's the issue, right? That rite of passage that they would get from that is kind of curbed, because you have to protect the sanctity of what you know to be right. So yeah, I don't. You're gonna make me go in circles because
No, you're
honestly,
good.
I don't know. It's really
I think
hard
you're doing
nowadays.
it though. But I think maybe you're unintentionally. I think like you said, that coffee shop unintentionally becomes that rite of passage moment, right?
Yep.
Um and your kids are taking on responsibilities, right? And I promise you, I'll put all my money, everything I own, which is not much, but I'll put all of it, and say that when they get older and they talk about, hey, what were moments that you felt like really took you to the next level? That coffee shop will be that. That will be that for them. I think also that, um, just you said you're a storyteller, right? And I can see, and that might be the tool that the best way for you to pass down to your kids is that it's I hear the businesses you started and I'm blown away. Like it really, I started an insurance agency, right? And that's what I do. I'm in the insurance industry and I've been on it. I'm coming on my third year and it's like,
Congrats.
thank you. And it's like, it's hard. Like it's hard. So when I hear you say you start a football league, I'm like, you're not talking to somebody that like works for somebody that's saying, wow, that's impressive. It's like, this is a person that had to start from some scratch. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, I can't even begin to scratch the surface of what it takes to do something like that. And I think that hopefully you feel encouraged when I said the rite of passage moment. It's like, I think you're already doing it. I really think you're already doing it. Um, um, what I meant in bringing that up, it's more of just like, kind of because you were kind of hinting on it a little bit ago, which is like you're realizing that there are things that you've learned that it's hard to pass down to your kids. It really is hard. And in the book that I'm reading, one of the beautiful things about it, it's awesome because it's not something that people are naturally good at. We're not naturally good at creating this but what the book, oh yeah, the title of the book is called Intentional Father. And so it's
Okay.
like that's what it is. It's how do you be intentional about what you're doing? Because these things don't just, there are things that are going to naturally happen, coffee shop. but you also want to be in control of intentional moments that you
Right.
can create with your kids. And that's what the invitation of the book is. And I, man, it sounds like your whole family is on board as far as like you guys seem to be in unison heading in some direction. Obviously, you're gonna have some tensions here and there, so be it. But like I don't know too many bad stories where kids have been invited into what the mom and the dad are doing
Right.
has turned out negatively. I don't know too many of those. If anything, those moments tend to strengthen families pretty well. And it sounds like that's been the case for you guys. And you talk about your two kids and how the slightest thing you say could be hard. It's like, I got a 4-year-old, and it's like, I can tell I have to watch how, like, the tone of my voice to her. Because even, like, moments where I, like, celebrate her, I'm like, yeah, you're doing it. She's like, I can't do it. And I'm
Right.
like, wait,
Right.
what did you hear? That's not what I
What?
said at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Yeah,
yeah. So,
it's the greatest job I'll ever have, being a parent, but it is definitely the hardest. In fact, I drive my wife crazy sometimes because she's like, "You're not getting through to them," because I'll be sitting there and talking to them for 2 hours individually about something that
yeah.
happened and trying to like paint a picture as to why it happened and how we can, make it so that we can just make a better decision, or this is why that, anyways, I bury, and that again, I think goes back to that conversation of why I felt you made a statement. I can't remember exactly, but basically I've gone through it with other people. But the main reason that I tend to go through it with other people is if I even care about you a little bit, I'm going to
Yeah.
hype you up. I'm going to call you. I'm going to message you. I'm going to say, hey, don't be surprised if in the future you don't get a message from me going, how's the podcast going? And you might be
Mm.
like, why is this dude still talking to me? Or you might like it. But the issue is like, that's just who I am as a person. I'm not always perfect. I'm not always going to answer right away, but I will always, um, if I have even the littlest connection with people, I try to make sure that they understand that they're a vital part of this world, and that they need to continue on the, getting better and doing everything for, the better.
Well, we talked about we're talking about the influences that you have on your kids. I'm curious. I know we're kind of coming towards the end of this podcast, but I would love to hear this at least. Who are some of your mentors? Who are some people that really like, if you were to shout them out, like who are the people that helped you on this journey for you to become who you are, and why were they impactful to you?
This might be the saddest part of the story.
Mm.
Honestly, I everybody I ever tried to get close to was ripped away from me.
Mm.
So I think I took a little bit from everybody, but not in a mentorship way so much as like I still remember my foster dad, and my foster mom, the ones that I got removed from that night I was listening to Eminem. And he loved sports. He was a big fan of the Raiders. I ended up choosing the Jets as my favorite team,
Mm.
embarrassingly
Wow.
enough.
Wow.
But ever since then, I've loved the Jets, and I won't ever give up on the Jets. That's why I love the Jets, right? And then I think about, where I've taken my personality traits and my archetypes from. I think that it's a little bit of those, every one of those people, because I joke with people all the time. You put an 80-year-old in front of me that has met more people than me, and I will be blown away.
Wow.
Because once you're in 13 different schools and you're in foster care bouncing around and you've lived in 3 different states, like you tend to meet a lot of people. So I am an advocate for taking every human being that you engage with as a mentor to a certain extent. And to end with that,
Yeah.
um, I would say I also utilize books to find those mentors, and I'd love to recommend a book to you if you wouldn't
Okay.
mind
Well,
too.
not just recommend, but talk about some books that impacted you. Period.
So the one that has really impacted me the most is Benjamin Franklin: An American Life by Walter Isaacson. Um,
Walter Isaacson.
yep. Ben lived a life of achievement to the tune of 1,000 to any of us, right? And it was before fast travel. And I joke I use a video game, reference fast travel, but seriously, this man was able to do all of that when the most you had was a horse and carriage.
Mm.
He was a printer. He was the head of the postal service. He was uh, the one that started the fire department. He was the one that started the first libraries in Philadelphia. He was the one.
Well, don't spoil the book now because there's
But
no.
I got to tell you, that book for real though is
Yeah,
like better than any fictional story you'll ever read in your life, hands down. It is on Audible. To give you perspective, it's a 27-hour long book. I've got it in hardback, I've got it in soft, and I've got it on Audible. It is just a great book. And it also shows, too, that even at a time when slavery was acceptable, to go back to that conversation, Ben was really having a bunch of turmoil with it. In fact, his were, especially towards the end, his were treated more like servants than anything. They lived in the house with everybody. They basically would cook and clean, but they weren't, doing like field work or anything like that. Not that that makes it any better. I want to make that very clear.
no, no, no.
But in the 1700s, a man that was in his 80s was able to realize that this was not quite right. He was one of the first ones that started speaking out for abolition, or abolishment. But not to mention, he was
I
doing.
think people forget that. I think that's. I want to highlight a thing where you're saying it there. We often think that if we were back in time, we would behave differently, right? We think we would make different decisions, right? Even like, let's pick something that, another horrific thing, Hitler, what Hitler did. There's a talk that Jordan Peterson talks about how he's like, most of you think, like, he's like, just nearly every one of you would have been on his side if you were in German at the time, right? Or it's like, it's rare. He's like, rarely are you on the right side of history, right? That's why it's very few people. So to the people that are listening, right? And I don't think they, like, just to emphasize the point you're trying to make, which is like that mindset, that shift, right? It's like, that's the kind of stuff that would have gotten you killed instantly if you were to think, right? And
Right.
I've heard of situations where if whites have found out that they were treating slaves as more as servants, like, they could be backlash for them too. Like, there's like, oh, you like that, you know what I'm saying? So it's I get what you're saying when you say that he's looking at something, he's wrestling with it, and being able to then say they're living in the home. Like, there's a difference between I'm having my mind shifted versus I'm actually treating them in ways that shows that.
Right, that it's innate, right? Exactly. Well, and you also know that Ben was a deist in the time of Pilgrims, in the time of Quakers. That's unreal, right? To be able to be as successful as he was.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they that God wasn't really involved in a lot of things, right?
Yeah, that, and they don't really believe in a specific, like, it's more the idea of there is definitely a power.
Steps away. Yeah, he
Right, there
created
is.
steps away.
Right, and that Ben was an advocate for your acts towards other humans and towards situations mattered more to God than praying to God, because that was, and that was absolutely incorrect from everybody's perspective, both currently and back then. But he just genuinely believed, like, when one of his slaves actually left while he was in the UK. And they said, "Do you want us to go and get him?" And he was like, "No, he's a free man here, and that's his right." He did not try to ask for him back. He did not try to send anybody after him. He just said that is his right, and that's, it is what it is. I think that so that Benjamin Franklin, An American Life by Walter Isaacson is the best book I've ever read in my life, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention two more.
Go ahead.
And the next one is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. That's the guy that I was being coached by. Dan is probably, it's odd. He like, if I could attach myself to any other entrepreneur, current or past, he, like, for whatever reason, I feel like he's a very close mix to how I look at life. And that Buy Back Your Time is just basically saying, like, you even if you aren't all the way through your entrepreneurial path, the moment that you can start to leverage other human beings in a healthy way. So for instance, one of his first things that he says you should get are one of two things, and that is a house manager. And so a house manager is there to make sure food cooked, dishes done, cleaning around the house. But more importantly than that, because that's mostly maid stuff, that's not what the house manager is supposed to do. But in the beginning stages, that's kind of how it ends up being. But they are also, going to figure out bills. They're going to figure out how to get your water to your desk so that when you come to your desk in the morning, your water's already there and waiting for you, so that you don't have to think about the minutia. You can focus on the next level thinking, the next level planning, and things like that. And then, of course, the other thing is an executive assistant. And actually, all of last month, I was using an executive assistant from the Philippines. And I cannot tell you, just having her do 1 or 2 of my social medias, the amount of pressure it took off of me, allowing me to, get more done in a shorter period of time without worrying about the minutia and being able to be creative. And then the most important book on my path, which I actually have signed by him, and I'm going to bring this one. I have Dan signed Buy Back Your Time too, but this one's important to me. It says, to Tom, here's to the path less traveled, work smart and play often, kia kaha, Tim. So you can't really see it, but anyway, so it's the 4-hour work week. And this is the reason I am an entrepreneur. And it's by Timothy Ferriss. Tim came to me by complete accident. I had Brookstone. I had finally gotten my own store, beat all of our numbers that we were supposed to beat. In fact, saved it from the prior manager I took over from and excelled. But the mall we were in was crashing, and so they closed my store. And before they closed my store, I went down to Barnes & Noble. It was the one that closed, whatever the one that closed is. And this book was sitting on an end cap facing outward, and I saw this picture with the person laying in the hammock and the trees, and I was like, well, that's weird. And I looked at it, and it said, the 4-hour work week, escape 9 to 5, live anywhere, and join the new rich. And so this book is essentially a play on, honestly, Buy Back Your Time is kind of a descendant of this book. This is basically, it shows you how to take the business that you have built and shrink it down in a way that allows you to walk away from the business, but the business to still flourish while you go in. And you might not make as much money, but you're going to go and get to live. You're going to get to go and, vacation and be with family, things like that. But this is the reason that I'm an entrepreneur, 4-hour work week. I recommend it heavily.
I'll actually, when we get off this call, I'll just order all 3 of those books. I'm excited about the Benjamin Franklin one for sure. I'm always amazed at how we have more technology, more resources than ever, and it seems like we can move a lot less than people back then were able to.
Well, Ben would work circles around you and me put together. It's just wild to think about.
But then you look at people like Elon Musk, right? And it's like you see what he can do, and you're like, okay, that's Benjamin Franklin level stuff. You know what I'm saying? That what he's doing.
Yep.
And so there's this gap between. There's a sense of perspective that reading people in the past and what they've been able to accomplish. There's a certain perspective. How do you? I promise we'll wrap up. But how do you know when enough is enough for you? Like, how do you know when? Or do you even know when is enough is enough?
See, you got that. You got the look in my face, and you read it. I don't see as enough is enough. I mean, in an interaction with another human, obviously you have the path where this. I'm not going to get anywhere with this person or whatever, right? But with business and with trying to reach the top, your laziness, and not even laziness, because I don't even particularly think laziness is a word that we should use for anything anymore, because laziness is just inattentiveness. It's something that we don't really want to do. It's not about being lazy. It's about we haven't found something that interests us, right? But enough's enough when you feel that there's nothing left to do. And I personally, I think about, say I get all of these buildings up and I have the high fences and I give people that Universal Studios feel, I'm going to get bored. I'm not going to just do that, right? Like, I'm going to hire somebody and I'm going to have them run it. And I'm going to, I'm going to watch overhead, but not a snowball's chance in hell that I'm going to walk, that I'm going to just do that for the rest of my life. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't even know what the next thing is, but I will tell you, to give you insight, into my particular level of
Yeah.
psychosis.
Yeah.
My main dream is to have a terraforming company. And so terraforming is when you take uninhabitable planets and spaces and make
Yeah.
them Earth-like, inhabitable for humans.
Yeah.
So if that gives you any idea of when enough's enough, I don't have an end, because I mean that literally is so far in the future, but it is still on my mind every second of every day.
I mean, I think when people think terraforming, I don't know if there's an end in sight. That's the whole thing.
Right.
That's the whole thing. Yeah.
Right.
There's something new that needs to be. Wow, that's quite an ambition. I feel like we got to save that for next time. And so I want to ask you more questions on that, but I have to close out with this. I noticed your shirt, Chicago Bulls.
Yes, sir.
Oh, basketball. I know you're a huge fan of basketball. Are you a fan of the Bulls as in, or is it just the shirt? You just like the jacket? I mean,
Oh no, I'm in fact, so the New York Jets are the only team outside of Chicago that so the Bulls and the Cubs are my teams in baseball and basketball. I still remember watching Jordan on TV while living in Chicago, and I'll never,
So it's interesting, right? Because Isaiah Thomas actually was born in Chicago. He was supposed to be who you guys worship,
and now he's a hater.
Well, I'm saying like he put Chicago.
No.
He put Chicago. I mean, he made it really, really big, and then obviously MJ drafts him, and then even though what the Pistons were not Pistons, why am I struggling? Detroit Pistons,
Yes.
Even though that's that path, MJ is still known more than So is MJ for you? Is he the GOAT?
Oh yeah, hands down.
Okay.
I like LeBron, but I'm more in the mold of I like Derrick Rose more than I like LeBron. Mainly and only because there's a certain level of loyalty necessary to be the GOAT. You've got to stick it out. You've got to like, you can't just walk away and go somewhere else to do it and then come back and be like, yo, I'm back. Like, and still get the same vibes, right? Because when Jordan isn't remembered for going to North Carolina and buying the Hornets, nobody knows like why or how, and nobody cares, right? But they do know that he was there, accountable, and always on that team. So yeah, that's my take on that.
Do you well, I mean, Derrick Rose, I mean, you guys are pretty much trying to put a statue up for him. Derrick Rose, I feel like, is one of those players that, like, I don't know anybody that has anything negative to say about him. Like, he was absolutely, I mean, he was Russell Westbrook before Russell Westbrook, right? As far as just the crazy athleticism.
I mean, he was going straight up against LeBron in a situation where LeBron had, like, next tier players, and he had Kirk Heinrich and Joakim Noah, right? Like, and I'm not taking away.
You're not going to disrespect Tom Thibodeau. You're not gonna do Joakim Noah like that.
No, okay, I love Tom. I love Tom.
Luau Deng.
And Luau's good too, but like, think about it. Like, they were like, he didn't have
MVP year.
Of course, but he didn't have like a Scottie Pippen or a Dennis Rodman. Joakim Noah was basically his Dennis Rodman. I guess you could kind of get there. But as far as like, Kirk could score 30 a game if he was hitting threes, right? And Luau could score 26, 27 a game if he was really driving to the bucket and getting those mid-range shots. But
you're right.
Literally during those playoffs, remember, they would triple team Derrick Rose. Like, at times, like, he could not get into the lane. He could not, anyways.
What was helpful is you guys had Taj Gibson and Joakim Noah. Those were pretty good. Yeah, no, I got you. And I think Tom Thibodeau's excellence in defense is probably what really, because both were known for their defense, and then you had his name, Derrick Rose, was just an offensive monster. Well, my friend, it has been an absolute honor, like, having you. Like, I can't believe it's 2 hours and like 14 minutes already.
Right.
Obviously, this is good conversations. I want to leave you with this, man. Like, when I say it's an honor to have you on this, I really mean that, man. Like, because it's not very often that you get to meet people that have gone down the hero's journey like you have gone down, and for you to still want to give back when so much was taken from you, and when you have opportunities where you could blame those things, but rather for you to see your past as a tool that actually launches you further forward. That was my biggest takeaway from this conversation, from just hearing your life story. And so I know there's things that you want to pass down to your kids. I know there's things that you want to, uh, but to some stranger on the other side of United States, uh, I was moved, man. I was moved, and like
I
I
appreciate that.
really, I'm looking forward to. I'm glad I got your phone number so I can bug you more. But like, I'll be more than happy to set up something down the road that even just beyond the podcast of just I want to follow up what's going on with you. And so I just want to say thank you for being on the pod. I don't know if you got any message you want to give to anybody that's listening. This is your moment. Anything you want to say?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for the kind words and thank you for having me on. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to see you guys at episode 100, episode
Uh,
200, and further if that's what you want to do, right? I guess if I could leave with anything is, and I've recently started making this one of my mantras, is whether you want to work a job, steady job for the rest of your life, whether you want to become something great, you want to become the best at something, remind yourself that nobody's coming to do it for you. Nobody's coming to save you. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? Because you have only one obligation if you're on that path, and that is to get at least 1% better every day. And that's the most important thing to keep in the back of your mind. Nobody's coming to save you and nobody's coming to do it for you. But as long as you just get 1% better every day, you're way ahead of most of the people around you. And at the end of the year, you can say you're 365% better than you were when you started.
Dude, I think that's a good place to put a pause on that. So